What the fuck just happened? I can't run. I can't hold my breath. Nothing works. What is going on with this fucking game? Oh my fucking god, dude. Let's try this. Okay. I recently got a chance to play Hell Let Loose on PS5 for a couple days, and I gotta say that it was a truly subpar experience. The bugs are very present, the maps run poorly, and without needing to talk about the player base using VoIP just to burp and fart into the mic, I'm gonna go over what a 3,000 hour veteran PC player thinks about it and how you can help yourself and the community get a better experience in Hell Let Loose. The first issue I had when I launched into the game was that every time I die, the controller configuration would change back to the default, configuration A. This was very annoying to say the least, but what was even worse was the sensitivity adjustments. There really isn't a good balance between rifles at long range, then switching to an SMG for close range, without changing the sensitivities. The lack of curve on the right stick is the reason for this, and it's always been my personal secret sauce for being able to accurately shoot short and long distances with any weapon. I also noticed that there isn't an axial dead zone to the sticks either, which means that moving the reticle in a perfect X or Y axis motion is literally impossible. Every game on the market since the PS2 era has had a native axial dead zone setting, whether adjustable or not. But not Hell Let Loose, go figure. As most of you know, I have used a PS4 controller to play this game since I began in Update 7. In Update 7, the game recognized the inputs from a controller natively. Then Update 8 happened, and all support was lost. And using DS for Windows controller configurator didn't work either. So that's when I had to spend a couple days reconfiguring the controller in Steam's controller configurator, and I have been using the same setup ever since. Minor adjustments have been made over the years to this config, but the only big mod that I did was overclock my controller to a 1000 polling rate, which made a very noticeable difference in control and the way the graphics move across the screen. The default polling rate of controllers is 250, which causes a noticeable stutter on screen, even when just moving ever so slightly. For a better explanation of this, click the information box on the top right. Let's start with the specs. The first thing I did was plug in my Asus VG27AQ. This monitor is G-Sync compatible and HDMI 2.0. So I go into the settings and run the test to support 1440p. Then I went to click on variable refresh rate, and it wasn't supported on my monitor. Then after doing some research, I found out that VRR is only supported using the HDMI 2.1 protocol. That's a real shame, because HDMI 2.0 is supported at 1440p up to 120 Hz. But then realizing that Sony doesn't sell any 1440p monitors, it quickly becomes apparent as to why they wouldn't support every other monitor on the market. Xbox does this just fine, by the way. I mean, hell, my RTX 4080 doesn't even support HDMI 2.1. Why would most monitors on the market do that? Shame on you, Sony. Next step was to get my headphones working. I just simply plugged them into the USB port and I was good to go. I set up the audio and found that keeping off 3D audio was better for Hell Let Loose. I then loaded up Hell Let Loose and was greeted by a really nice animated image that I had never seen before, which if you look at the game on Steam, you'll recognize the new image behind the new logo. I do like the look of the new logo, and I'm glad Team 17 is making it their own. I was fine with the old one though too. I loaded up into a game and found myself in Purple Heart Lane. Now being the expert anti-tank player that I am, I started off the round with a 16 kill streak, including that tank shot in the intro. I hadn't figured out how to record on the PS5 at this point, but thankfully the PS5 has a feature that automatically records content-worthy moments. With that said, that 16 kill streak was difficult to achieve as my ADS horizontal sensitivity was at 8, and the ADS vertical sensitivity was at 4. These were incredibly slow settings, and it was still impossible to adjust the iron sight on a pixel-by-pixel basis with any bit of controllable accuracy. the chance of overshoot was very high. I missed a bunch of shots that would have been very easy kills on PC. Not only was the game running very poorly, it felt like every little adjustment I made to track an enemy resulted in micro-stutters, which hindered you from making accurate adjustments. Over the years, I have adjusted my playstyle using a controller to drift over the enemy and then shoot, versus trying to line it up perfectly. But if I'm on basically the lowest sensitivities possible, and I can't line up a shot smoothly, with the controller acceleration turned to 0, then that's a major problem regarding accuracy and being able to hit a running target under 100 meters and being able to track that enemy at the same speed or just a little faster. You can forget using this low of sensitivities using an SMG or any interaction under 100 meters. I did look up a bunch of YouTubers' configurations, and while it seems that many people are using the exact same settings, it's still a one-foot-in-the-door approach to controller playing movement. The console tries to make up the lack of player movement speed in the game by allowing you to adjust the stick aim acceleration, which gives the player an unpredictable whipping motion to help the player reach their top aiming speed and not be limited on aim speed by using lower sensitivities. A ramping effect, so to speak, which isn't good for muscle memory and can be unpredictable in games with bad performance. With the standard YouTuber configuration set up, I journeyed into another match. And while this setup is okay at best, it does draw a line between close-up and medium-range engagements. It still lacks the fine control needed for a full range of engagements that this game requires to be effective. So what's the difference between my configuration in Steam versus console? My right stick has a curve, where the console is a linear line. This is an issue that took me about 100 hours to dial in when I started playing this game. Once I figured out how to achieve fine control for medium and long range shots, with a steep curve at the end of the stick for when I need to retreat and move fast, then I knew that this would be very effective in Hell Let Loose. The issue as far as layout goes in Hell Let Loose for console is how they have the buttons mapped, and many of them double mapped. More specifically though, is how you have to press R3 for melee and press circle for crouch and hold circle to go prone. That double mapped combination alone adds to the delay in which your character actually starts to go prone. I used the start button on my controller to go prone. I learned a long time ago that you want a dedicated button to go prone in Hell Let Loose. On my controller, I use R3 for crouch. That's the only function that button performs. Now since Hell Let Loose has a lot of functions that need to be mapped to a single controller, I have always used a chat pad attached to my controller, so I can use dedicated buttons for VoIP and to switch to a specific seat in a vehicle. This way I have every single action on a single button. There is no double mapping to any button. This reduces latency and feels as tactical as using a keyboard. Another thing about my secret sauce right stick sensitivity is that the stick is mapped to the mouse. In Steam, you can set the stick up in various ways. I use joystick mouse, whereas even the default config for PC controller players is set to joystick. Not only is there a difference in configurable options to adjust when using joystick mouse, but the main one is the curve adjustments, and the ability to basically change the resolution of the stick when it's centered to fully extended. This resolution ranges from 0 to 100. Mine is set to 60 for Hell Let Loose, but set to 100 for Battlefield 1. That's a big difference in control parameters, but each game engine uses different in-game control features. Hell Let Loose is very limited, and even in Steam, it's listed as having partial controller support. These two adjustments are superior in every way to the console settings, and the devs need to seriously add a right stick curve adjustment with a slider for custom adjustments, and also add a slider for the axial dead zones. They also need to add a much higher scale for the sensitivity adjustments. Setting the hipfire sensitivities to max and stick acceleration to 100% results in a much slower turning speed than what I was currently used to on PC. This alone will get you killed, let alone not being able to land a single shot, as the screen would be all over the place with the most minute of stick movements. If Team 17 could add in a custom right stick curve adjustment slider, adjustable axial dead zones, and allow for a wider range of sensitivities, then this would be an overnight game changer. I knew the controller was going to be an issue the day Black Matter announced the game was coming to console. Call it lack of trust, but I have spent far more time figuring out what works and what doesn't than they have. When I first got into a match, the performance issues were immediately noticeable. I actually cannot believe that this game is for sale, for real money. You may think I'm joking, but I'm not. This game runs so bad on console, and to nobody's surprise either, as it runs bad on PC too. But this game should be free on console, and $60 on PC, because that's the difference in perceived value from my experience. And I can now see how console players have felt left in the dark. Because even if you promised to fix the issues on console, nobody judges the experience as harsh as if they had paid $30 for it. Who cares if it's bad? It's free, and it's kind of fun. This does show that PC users are just used to the bugs regarding most games these days, and will put up with a lot just to have some fun. But console players can do absolutely nothing to mitigate these issues. They are stuck with whatever the devs give them. I thought to myself that there must be something that can be done to gain a little bit of performance though. So I looked in the system settings and found that I could set the console to performance mode. I hopped into a match, and the game ran much better. But I quickly realized that was going to be short-lived. As I approached just a couple friendlies on an objective, I could feel the movement in the stick start to get sluggish, and noticed dips into the 50 FPS range. Shortly after a bombing run came in, and there was dips into the 40s. This used to happen in Update 7, and as annoying as it was to see on console, it was a familiar feeling. But then as more people respawned in, the game remained sluggish and noticeable micro-stutters, until I respawned into an area with no players. I knew this game on console was going to be a rough ride, and an even tougher venture for Black Matter. But damn, the performance threw me off so bad that I had to load up Rainbow Six Siege just to see if there was something wrong with the console. Needless to say, it's the game. I must reiterate that if you love Hell Let Loose, and you are currently on console, you should build a PC if you can. You can build a PC for much less than a console, and you can still use a controller, and your experience will be far significant than what you are currently used to in every way, shape, and form. I also say this because the bugs on console have been on PC for a long time, and nobody knows when they'll be fixed, as it's not clear right now as to what's causing them. Meanwhile, playing on low-spec hardware like a console without a dedicated GPU just makes the bugs so much worse as you feel it in every bit of movement and action. If you think college should be free, then this console game should be free. I tested this game on 1080p, 1440p, and 4K. And while 4K offered better clarity, the performance loss and input lag was just not worth it. 1080p and 1440p offered the same exact performance, but without the variable refresh rate option being usable using HDMI 2.0, there was very minor screen tearing, because the game cannot maintain a stable 60 frames per second, which is completely unacceptable in 2023, especially when TVs have been 60 Hz for decades. Hell, even Super Mario Bros. On the NES ran at 60 FPS, and that was cutting edge at the time. But here we are in 2023, with modern hardware, and a game built in Unreal Engine 4 with nearly 4 years of development can't even maintain a stable 60 frames per second, which is disappointing to say the least. Is there hope for console players? No, not really, unless every one of you gets in the Hell Let Loose Discord and starts voicing your grievances within the community. Us players on PC have complained about issues for years, and that has fallen on deaf ears, and many just quit the game forever or give up on voicing their opinions. You were sold a product that does not perform as advertised, with a whisper of a promise that it will get resolved at some distant point in the future. And I imagine that it's only gotten worse over time. Game developing companies only give a shit about the bottom line, and if you keep giving companies your money for half-produced products, then the price should be half. But it's not, because greed and promises drive the market, and don't force companies to stand up by their product when they already have your money. The console community deserves an apology for the money grab that was allowed to happen on their dime. This isn't an understatement. The experience is terrible, and the console community deserves a smooth gameplay experience, especially when the game isn't cross-platform with PC. Thousands of people have voiced their opinions about the issues in this game, and Black Matter did nothing to resolve them. And even when they claimed that they were 100% fixed, the issues were still present and in many cases much worse. This lack of caring about their game and community has clearly dribbled down onto console, and it shows. Some people will praise developers like they're gods, but they're just people who by some means or another have allowed upper management to make piss-poor decisions that do not reflect this community, or a prosperous business model that lends itself to the long game. That's why this game is on sale constantly, and free weekends every other month. They only want short-term profits, so there isn't an incentive to fix old issues, when all they have to do is release a new buggy map or a new weapon, then promise to resolve the issues in the future, even though they knew about the issues ahead of time. Then just repeat the process until you have 1 million copies sold and 8,000 people a month playing it. When you create a video game, and you are on the cusp of having it be one of the best games out there, but you refuse to fix bugs and playability issues that every game on the planet managed to figure out since the beginning of time, it's either willful ignorance or doesn't make money. I hope I can eat my words someday, and people flood my comments saying I was all wrong about this. But it's now at the helm of Team 17, and while I do have hope for this game and the promise of 6 more years of development, there will be bugs, and we all know that. But if the bugs in the community get ignored for years at a time, then this game will never grow and never run properly on console without some serious degradation in quality. And Team 17 will have to find other ways of making money on their investment, like adding microtransactions. Look, I would have loved to have made an exciting video on how great the experience was, but then I'd just be a shill freelancing blowjobs at the gates of hell. So I'd rather be honest and come to an understanding of what the expectation was supposed to be as a consumer versus the reality that you were sold on. If I sell you a tomato that looks ripe on the outside, but I know it's mushy in the middle, and you buy it, then you have the right to get your money back. That's what's happened here, and it's a real shame to see a player base enjoying something so special that the community that sold you the promise is willing to look the other way once they have your money. Get a Discord account and start adding your voice to the Hell Let Loose Discord. It's the only thread of information that they pay any attention to. If they are bombarded by people with legitimate complaints, they won't be able to ignore it, even if they are completely aware of the issues. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. See ya.